Okay, this is where I speak about my son's journey, and I'm going to be very specific and pick certain aspects only because he doesn't have capacity, and I'm not going to be talking about really personal things about him because he doesn't have capacity to say yes or no. I don't want my story shared that way. So the only thing I'm going to say is we were in private rented accommodation for about 12 years. The landlord decided to, I don't know what the case was. I know what the case is now, but I didn't at the time, 100%. Either do the place up to sell it or relet it, or to move back into the property themselves. I now know what is the case with that, but I didn't at the time fully. The second point is that happened April 2018, where we got our first notice to quit. So fast forward, went through the system because my son is got severe autism and learning disabilities, sensory needs, and a bunch of other things where we couldn't be homeless. We knew he was going to struggle with having to leave his home that he felt comfortable with and had been there since he was nearly 13 years old. But we didn't have a choice, and it was a case of fighting the system long enough to try and get us housed. So eventually we got offered a property for him, and we were trying to find a property for us all together, and the council just couldn't. Every time they came up with something, it wasn't going to suit. My son's noisy as any stims, and if you've got an attached neighbour, it can cause problems because he can be up through the night, and he's not purposely trying to be noisy, he's just vocal and chirpy and jumps around and stuff. So, we were like, well, we can't take that because there's somebody attached onto that, and we're just going to get evicted because they're going to complain. And I know that every complaint the council's got to take seriously, so I said we're going to end up in a position where somebody's going to just complain about him being up through the night or whatever, and he's vocal stimming, and it's just going to be a disaster. So unless you can find a way around that, how's that going to work? We had professional people involved, occupational therapists, everybody involved. So that particular property, where we got offered somewhere, and it was an old post-war prefab Orlet build, and it had a lot of stuff wrong with it, and we were in the process of, there'd been a lot done to it, we're doing stuff up, and there was just other things that kept coming out the woodwork, and we kept saying yeah it's fine, and we're going to do that, and we're going to do that. And I mean, a lot of work had been done on it, but we kept finding things all over the place, and we kept thinking, well, we can't do that until you can't move in until that's done. You can't move in until that's done. And it got to the point where we were going to be evicted out of our home before all the work had been carried out. Then we found out that the support package, the care providers that were going to provide a full-time package of support for my son full-time because he's not independent, were short-staffed. They had one member of staff who was fantastic, but one member of staff only at the time, where they would have been expecting my son to be in there on his own with this one member of staff, only available for shifts, and my partner and I. Then we found out that my health was on the decline. I'd been feeling poorly, and April of 2021, I found out that I had a 21 centimetre cyst where I had to get it sorted, and I was sped through the system to go into hospital to get this removed. They did cancer markers and all that was fine, but they couldn't figure out what it was and why it was there, and it was starting to affect my mobility. So just before that had happened, and I was struggling a bit and thinking something was up, but I wasn't quite sure what was going on. We'd said to the council, we can't proceed with this property because There's too much going on with it, and there was a lot of things that would have been needing to be done, which couldn't have been done when my son had moved in there due to his autism and sensory processing needs and sensory sensitivities and hyperacusis. So we found another private let, and we opted to go down that route because we just felt that that place wasn't going to cut it. The house layout was going to cause problems. It was starting to become apparent the house layout was an issue, and just a bunch of different things. So we went into private. We as a family went into a private let, and we ended up with being in that property 2 weeks, and then the landlord had an issue. Noise. My son was completely freaking out. He was having meltdowns because he wanted to return back to the old house, saying he wanted to go back home, didn't understand why he couldn't go back home, and it was just not fun. He freaked out so much so the first night we were there, we had to phone the police to get support to try and help to calm the situation down. There was myself, my partner, my son, 2 police officers, 2 members of managerial staff from the support company, and 1 personal support worker that they had employed. And it took till I think it was about 9 o'clock in the evening that night to get him settled and calmed down enough where the police could leave, and the personal support worker and the managerial staff that had helped with the transition could leave. He didn't settle. He was awake all night. He was up and down the stairs, slamming doors, screaming and shouting and carrying on because he was so upset and wanted to return back home. Fast forward the next day, we got our first complaint saying that there was an issue. So this is what I'm saying about, like, you just can't live anywhere where there's a problem, you know, where people have got such high needs as my son. So the cut and dry of it was that we eventually, within 2 weeks, we got a notice to quit. And why? Because my son was freaking out, because he didn't understand and couldn't cope with the transition, couldn't cope with leaving the house he'd called home for 12 years. He was beside himself, and nobody gave a crap because, it was just a case of we had no choice. Whatever happened, we had to be out of that old house. And he was just not happy. He was agitated. He was stressed out. He was not coping. Anyway, we were in that house from July, I think it was 2021, and I'd had my scan to state that a big cyst had been found, and then I think it was by the end of July, beginning of August, I got told I had an appointment to get my surgery. They originally thought it was a big mass over my left ovary, and I was going to have to have a double ovarectomy, but they weren't quite sure. I had another scan just before I went in, like an MRI, where I had to take this liquid stuff in a drink, and then it shows up whatever's going on. So I had that done just before I went in, and then I went in for my cystectomy, and the aftermath of that was that the consultant told me what happened. He said that this big mass was from rib to groin, and was really massive. It was filled with fluid, and it was caused, they think, by pockets forming after an open hysterectomy that had been done November 2020. Sorry, November 2009. They basically said that I'd had the surgery because of gynae-related issues to the point where it was making me so um, what's the word I'm looking for? Anemic. I was not well. I was bleeding profusely to the point where it was really being not good for my health. So I was determined to have that done. So that was done November 2009. And then fast forward, they said that when they got in there, my this mass had developed its own blood supply and attached itself onto my bowel and other things, and made it very difficult for them to drain and remove it safely, to the point where during the surgery they had to get like a bowel type specialist come in, and he basically said, don't, kind of tidy up the best you can, drain it and get out of there, because I think they were scared they were going to leave me with more damage. So anyway, unbeknown to me, I wake up and they said everything went okay. They kind of explained roughly what went on. And then the next part of this, I will go into that more in depthly, and then this will explain how the next part came about.